Fat Moose Comics is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Established in 1982 and under new ownership since 2020, Moose sells a wide selection of comics from every publisher and time period, along with action figures, graphic novels, posters, statues, and more. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany the next time you're in the Garden State, and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Aw Yeah Comics celebrates and promotes everything that is wonderful about comics, toys, artwork, and the joy they bring to people. Visit them in person at one of their 3 locations: Harrison, New York, aka my local comic shop, Skokie, Illinois, or Muncie, Indiana. If you have kids and have been looking for a family-friendly store, look no further. Join Aw Yeah for exciting events, including creator signings, how-tos, and more. Visit awyeahcomics.com and follow Aw Yeah on social media for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Say it with me now. Aw yeah. In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation, from its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years. To this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked chapter in the character's mythology. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 2, Episode 23, Lady in Black, is the author of Mr. Reeves, returning guest, Lou Koza. Welcome back.
Well, thank you once again. I feel like I was just here. But wait a minute. Are we doing Superman? I thought we were doing the Honeymooners.
One day, there might be a Honeymooners podcast in my future.
That's good. That's good. So thank you for having me back on the show. I really appreciate it. This is always a lot of fun, and I enjoy all of them, all the shows. And you've got some great guests. We're very knowledgeable, and I've learned, being a longtime Adventures of Superman fan, I've come to now know that you can always learn something. There's definitely things to learn.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to have you back. You were here earlier in the season for Semi-Private Eye, a Jimmy-centric episode, and now you're back for this. So these were the 2 episodes you picked, so I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah, it's another Jimmy, right? For some reason, Jimmy stands out right now for me. And, he was terrific, as I mentioned in our last presentation, that I got to know him pretty good, and a true gentleman, very, as kind as can be. And, if I could, do honor, it's an honor for me to do, the 2 shows that were Jimmy Olsen,
centric. Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. I think whenever we can match guests with episodes that they really have a personal connection to or attachment with, that's a wonderful thing. And so the fact that we're able to do that with you and these Jimmy centric outings, it's fantastic.
Right. And this Lady in Black episode, I think is, it's a fun episode. Okay. And we'll go through it and we'll discuss why.
Absolutely. So on that note, Lady in Black aired February 20th, 1954, written by Jackson Gillis, directed by Tommy Carr. Here is my synopsis of the episode that will provide our roadmap, and then we'll get more specific as we highlight certain scenes and moments. Jimmy, house-sitting for his mother's deaf friend, calls Clark late at night to report strange noises in the building. A neighbor, Mr. Frank, offers multiple explanations, but Jimmy follows the sounds to the basement, where he is struck off-screen. When Kent's follow-up call goes unanswered, Superman checks on Jimmy and is told by Mr. Frank that Jim hit his head on a beam and that the noises were caused by a cat. The next day, Jimmy faces a wild series of events all right out of the mystery novel he was reading. An intimidating man with a scar, a man in thick glasses, lady dressed in black, bundle of cash, dagger through the wall, and murdered body. When Superman arrives, all of this seems to be in Jimmy's head once again. Yet a private conversation between the Franks reveals a plot to discredit Jimmy and move stolen paintings through the building. When Jimmy calls Kent in for a 3rd time, his super hearing reveals the true plot, and he rounds up the bad guys, using super breath to blow away the Lady in Black's veil to reveal Mrs. Frank. Overall thoughts and impressions on this one?
Well, I tell you, when I first saw it as a kid, I couldn't figure out what was going on. It really got me. Okay, I was at times really fearful for Jimmy. I found it very it was kind of scary. Okay, in a way, and I think it's very far removed from so many other kinds of episodes. Okay, this really packed a lot of mystery. Okay, and I really was I didn't know what was going to happen, and those paintings on the walls, with the eyes and everything. Okay, that really bugged me out when I was a kid. Okay, um, but I hung in there. I didn't go crying to my mother, and uh, but uh, but I watching it as an adult, I enjoy it. Obviously, it's just he he had that fear, when he's crying out to Mr. Kent. Okay, and that really tugs at the heartstrings because I didn't know what was going to happen, so I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, it's funny that you not funny because I'm sorry that you were scared as a child watching it, but
Yeah.
the fact that you say that it was scary and it felt like a little bit of an outlier in these season 2 episodes, I agree. The thing that I put down in my notes here, it felt season 1 esque in its tone.
Hmm. Yeah.
So what you're saying, it definitely resonates, and it's lighter than this episode, but it does call to mind the haunted lighthouse.
Absolutely.
And the same type of setup where you have
Yeah.
Jimmy trying to figure out all of these weird events and nobody believing him and him seemingly losing it and calling Clark for help. So it
Right.
definitely felt reminiscent of that.
Right. And the thing that you mentioned about the haunted lighthouse, the two common things that each episode has is a thrown dagger. Okay. And I don't know how they did that stunt. Okay. Okay. Because it looks like, okay, that a dagger was thrown. Okay. I mean, it comes right across the screen in both instances. Okay. It's not like on a string and they just flung it into place, or I don't know how they did that. And, when I first met Jack Larson, um, in 1996, okay, in Metropolis, one of the things I had said to him, I asked him about some of those kind of things where a dagger was thrown, okay, or even in the Color episode, I think it's one of the island episodes, the one with the pirates, and I forget off the top of my head the name, but when the pirates go, attack, Superman and Lois and Jimmy, one of the pirates hits Superman in the chest with the sword, and the sword goes spiraling back and it hits Jack Larson. Okay. Okay. It had broken away from the handle. Okay. So I had asked him about the dagger and the sword, and he says, well, he goes, we were subjected to a lot of dangers on the show. And he goes, luckily, no one was really seriously hurt. Okay. And he goes, but they had great faith in Cy Simonson, the special effects man. So, but when I see those daggers go streaking across the screen and land into the wall, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say, I guess, as far as my overall feelings towards this one, like I said, it felt season 1 esque in a way that most of these other season 2 outings have not. And I do take that as a positive because I really did love season 1. But you really feel for Jimmy in this. You feel his fear, but even more so than that, the confusion and the frustration of seemingly experiencing these events that everyone else thinks are in his head. And, you really feel for what he's going through in that moment. And the other big thing is that this episode really does have a great turn when you get to that scene between the Franks in their kitchen, because up until that point, you don't really know exactly what the reveal is going to be. and
Right.
you don't know if honestly, this episode could have been a dream. I mean, it gets so outlandish at a
Yes.
point, especially that kind of middle sequence in the episode where there's the man with the scar and the man with the glasses and the lady in black. It's like, yeah, is this going to be the case that Jimmy actually did just hit his head and the rest of the episode is a dream? Or is there really this
Right.
outlandish of a plot afoot? It could be the case there really is this lady in black, or as you find out, the fact that they're doing all of this to make him seem crazy. But it's a good turn, and it comes deep enough into the episode where it really keeps you guessing. Like I thought it was very effective in that sense.
Yeah, it was definitely story wise meant to confuse. Okay. And, each of those characters that came along, okay, they all had that little extra sense of fear put into the story. Okay. First starting with John Duchette. Okay. And, he's got that scar, and it's menacing looking. And then he grabs, Jimmy Olsen. Okay. And a funny line is, him saying that, my coat got caught in your fists. Okay. I thought that was terrific. He had some really great dialogue in this episode. Okay. And, then you move over to the actor with the thick glasses, the round, thick glasses, and he was in Double Trouble in the 1951 season, or the first season. I'm trying to think of what his name. I
Rudolph
wrote it.
Anders.
Rudolph Anders. And you'll see him in a lot of the 40s and 50s movies, like the spy espionage kind of stuff, and he typically plays like like a Nazi kind of guy, and then there's the lady in black. Okay, and she's got what first sounds like to me a Russian accent. Now, as a kid, I would have never even known what Russia or Russian was. Okay, but okay, she sounds certainly enough like she's from Transylvania. Okay, and she's definitely dressed for the part. Okay, for going out on a date with Bela Lugosi, and she's got that that heavy accent, more so as it progresses on. Okay, and she was famous for the television ads for Folgers coffee, and she played Mrs. Olsen, and she would pitch the coffee. And so yeah, they all had this scary way about them. And like you said, the first season had a lot more of that edgy kind of thing, right? And so yeah, this could probably fit right in there, with season one.
Yeah, I would agree. And I was thinking about this. There's really the only moment in the first act of the episode where something is afoot is when Clark calls Jimmy again, as he promises to, right? Because they have that initial call, and then Clark's like, go to sleep, I'll call you later. And he does. And we see a hand pick up the phone and then put it down. And then when Superman gets there, Mr. Frank is like, oh, I knocked the phone over when I was helping Jimmy back. So that's a lie. So something's up, but that's really it at that point. Like, you don't really know, again, is this all in Jimmy's head? What's going on? So yeah, I think the episode's really effective in keeping you guessing. Again, I don't want to nitpick, and this is not the hill that I'm going to die on, but what is the setup for this episode that Jimmy is even house sitting in the first place? Because he calls Clark, and by the way, Clark has one of, I think, my all-time favorite George Reeves lines and deliveries, where Clark is busy. He doesn't want to be bothered by this late night call from Jimmy, and he says, why don't you kiss your mother and go to sleep? Why don't you kiss your mother goodnight and go to sleep?
Right, absolutely. And the reason why Jimmy was house sitting, I listened to it, okay, and I didn't retain why, but it had to do something with he's watching the apartment, you know, for a friend of his mother's. Okay, something to that effect. Okay, and she, you know, maybe they went away on a trip or something together, and so Jimmy was house sitting here. People sometimes do that; they house sit.
No,
Okay,
that part's fine, but it's because when Clark says, "Why don't you kiss your mother and go to sleep?" He's like, "I can't." She again, unless I misheard or I'm misremembering, but his mother went out of town visiting relatives, and
right,
Jimmy is house sitting for this other friend. Why?
right, right. I know.
Like, all right. I mean,
I thought maybe the mother and the woman had gone away somewhere together.
yeah.
Okay, but yeah, you know, Clark is. I got work to do. Okay, and it turns into, you know, it snowballs into, you know, the boy who cried wolf,
Yeah.
right? And it was, you know, it was confusing at times, and especially, you know, when you know, the paintings start to switch around off the walls, and you're like, what is going on here, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I guess maybe that opening scene, because the way I kind of carved this up in my notes is we have like these few key core sequences here in this episode. And the first one is when Jim first starts to hear these noises, kind of like, you know,
Yeah,
banging and scratching and just, you know, just noises that he can't account for. And like we said, he calls Clark for help. And, you know, Clark tries to put him at ease, tries to kind of diffuse the situation. Like, what'd you have for dinner? Well, a couple of hot dogs, ice cream. What was it? 2 pickles? And 2 pickles. For Jimmy, that's not a bad dinner.
and he's having imagination indigestion of the imagination.
Yes, that's Clark's diagnosis. And he says, "Go to sleep, and I'll call you later." But these noises persist, and Jimmy finds this other. I wasn't sure at first if Mr. Frank was meant to be like a superintendent or a landlord or just another neighbor. I guess just a neighbor.
I saw it as the superintendent, you know, landlord, superintendent of the building. Okay, and he turns out to be the mastermind.
Yeah, because he has all these seemingly logical explanations, like, oh, it's a truck outside or this and that, you know, just trying to kind of, again, put Jimmy at ease, disabuse him of his suspicion. But Jimmy persists and he follows it down to the basement. And like I said before, you know, he's like, something happens to him off screen and then we just kind of see him collapse and it goes from there. You know what I thought was interesting? When Clark calls back and again, he kind of hears the phone be lifted, right? But no one's there, right? And then that's it. He follows up as Superman, which I guess on the one hand for the audience, it's cool. We get to see some Superman, but I don't know. What do you make of the fact that Clark, because that feels like a job for Clark to follow up, but he went as Superman.
Well, first, you know, the moment when the person lifts up the phone, Clark knows right away. That was, I thought, pretty good. You know, he knew right away it wasn't Jimmy. Okay, and yeah, it would seem to make sense that Clark would be the one to show up, but it seemed like he had to get there fast. Okay, if he got there fast as Clark Kent, Jimmy would be like, how did you get here so fast? Okay, because they had at times questioned him in other episodes, right? Treasure of the Incas, right? How did you get down here so fast? Okay, and so you know, Jimmy has never been the one that was the guy that or the person that was always looking for, you know, to connect Clark and Superman, except for in Shot in the Dark. Okay, that was where he was, you know, kind of riding Clark a bit. Okay, and trying to make that connection between Clark and Superman was more of a Lois Lane thing. So even if Clark did show up, it might not have played into the episode, but I think that, you know, he had to get there fast. And I think, you know, it was to do that, he had to be Superman.
Yeah, no, I like that. No, I think that totally tracks. And we get to see Superman and it creates this kind of dual it's funny. It does create this like dual track in the episode where Jimmy's having all of these phone conversations with Clark
Yeah.
but all of these in-person encounters with Superman. And interestingly, this is an episode George Reeves and Jack Larson are our only series regulars who appear.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
So they carry this whole episode. And again, when Superman shows up, Mr. Franks has enough answers, right? He's able to kind of account for everything. It was Jimmy hit his head on the beam. He's got this big mark on his head. It was a cat who was making all these noises. I knocked the phone over. That's why, Kent didn't get an answer. And that kind of seems to be it. But the last kind of lingering bit of suspicion that I guess Jimmy just kind of chalks up to the excitement of the night is that the painting on the wall has seemingly changed from this piece with one eye to now one with two.
Yeah, well, I did keep track of it. Okay, and the episode it opens up with, let's see, I did write it down here. Okay. It opened up with one eye. Okay, and that's the one that falls off the wall. How did it fall off the wall? I don't know. Okay. But it does. And then later on, okay, just before Jimmy goes to bed, he looks at the painting and it's got two eyes. Okay. And that kind of carried through all the way, if you look at all the scenes, all the way to the very end. Now, when Superman confronts the lady in black, okay, in that room, it is still it's still the two eyes that's up on the wall. But it's when Superman escorts the lady in black out of the apartment, it's still the two eyes. But when Superman pops back, opens up the door and says he's pretty sure Clark heard you, right? And then closes the door, the camera pans over, okay? There's no way anybody could have changed it, right? But it turned into, the one eye, the one eye and the one wink, okay? One eye is a wink, one eye is open, okay? And just prior to that, Superman gave a wink to the camera. So those paintings helped cause a lot of confusion for that episode, and it did leave on an appropriate note because it had the wink, just like Superman had a wink, at the end. So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, no, thank you for tracking the painting like that and just kind of keeping your eye on it. And yeah, it's a couple of funny bits with respect to Superman and the dual identity. That moment exactly like you just laid out at the end where Clark had been on the phone and Jimmy wanted to make sure Clark heard all of this. And that's, of course, when Superman pops back in. Oh, I'm sure he did, right?
I'm sure he did. Yeah.
And earlier in the episode, after the kind of our second main sequence, when Jimmy encounters all of these wild characters in this crazy scenario and Superman shows up and is really pretty annoyed with Jimmy at this point, because now we really are in the boy who cried wolf territory. But he says, "Oh yeah, I have to get back to the office." And Jimmy's like, what do you mean the office? It's like, well, Kent has to do his work and he can't do it if I'm not there. I have to help him or something to that effect. And it's like technically true, right? Like, which is great. Like, he's not lying. That is actually true. Clark can't do his work if Superman is not in the office.
But why didn't Jimmy say, "Can you give me a lift?" Right?
Yeah.
Okay. You've got the Evil Three. Okay. This was a perfect time for Jimmy to get that rain check flight. Okay. And, Jimmy should have said, "Hey, can I hitch a ride?" Okay. But they didn't.
Yeah. So again, just kind of backtracking a little bit, that second main sequence, the next morning, Jimmy wakes up, he leaves, he's got a pep in his step. I think he's looking to put the night's events behind him. And that's when, again, he encounters all these people that we talked about. And it's disorienting for him and for the viewer, right? Because we're like, what exactly is going on? Again, you've got this intimidating man with the scar asking him for the time. And is this the right address? And is there a back entrance? And you didn't see me here.
Oh, yeah.
And then the man in glasses and lady in black talking in code, asking Jimmy about the weather and the clouds and all of this.
Right.
And then again, it just progresses with the bundle of cash and the dagger through the wall. And here's,
Right.
you know what though? Here's a key difference, I think, between season 1 and season 2, because Jimmy opens the Frank's door and he sees a dead body on the floor. We don't see anything. And I
Right.
guess you could say, well, part of it was to kind of contribute to this overall sense of we don't know if Jimmy's going crazy or not. But I think that's more maybe we're in season 2 territory and we're not going to like show the body.
Right. Yeah, right. And if you remember in season 1, the Lois Lane episode, the one with the Night of Terror.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. When she first comes in and you see the woman, laying on the floor. Okay. That for, I remember that was a little harrowing to see. Okay. So here we are with Whit Ellsworth, who is, trying to really make a product, that the censors are going to, want, to pitch their products. So they leave out, that kind of thing. So, but, Jimmy, he pulled it off, he had that horrified look and off he went running, out the building, and he comes back with the police officer.
I love when Superman shows up.
Yeah.
And he dismisses the police officer.
Yes.
It's just crazy. He's like, I got this. You can go.
Right. Right. Okay. So here you got Superman, who is the authority figure here. Okay. And the police officer, think about it in real life, right? You got a guy wearing a costume. Okay. And he's going to tell a police officer, don't worry, officer, I got this. Don't worry about it. The officer is going to say, all right, everybody down to the station. Okay. So, but it was pretty good. It stays in step with, Superman's got it under control.
Yeah, no, it's perfectly in keeping, I think, with this show and just this era and this iteration of the character. But it was just so funny to me. But yeah, like that, you really see him, right, in that position of authority. He's the one giving the orders there. It's not like, it's not the opposite. It's not the police officer saying, it's okay, Superman, like, I'll take the report. Like, you can go.
Right. Yeah, right.
And
it's not like the first season where, many of the characters didn't know who Superman was. Okay, by this season, he's well known, right? Because many times in the first season, there were like people looking at him in awe. Superman, who's that? Who's the man? Who's the guy in the clown outfit, right? And but season 2, he's well established, and so if Superman says it's all right, then it's all right. I can go.
We reference the television series Smallville a lot around here, and there's one Smallville rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Always Hold On to Smallville, hosted by our pal, Zach Moore. Zach and his guests bring tremendous insight, passion, and humor as they discuss each and every episode of the series that ushered in the renaissance of superhero TV. Listen to Always Hold On to Smallville wherever you get podcasts, and keep an eye out for the other shows under the Always Hold On to banner, including Arrow, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, Superman and Lois, and Star Wars. Filmmakers and movie fans alike should be sure to attend these film festivals: Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, Point Lookout on Long Island, and Round Reel in Bloomfield, New Jersey. Take it from an alum of 2 of them. Submission information for filmmakers, as well as details about the festivals, can be found at filmfreeway.com. Follow the festivals on social media for news about events, discounts, tickets, and more. Also, listen to the Hang On to Your Shorts and Cullen on Film podcasts, available via a shared universe network. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Yeah, absolutely. And that's then when we have this private scene between the Franks in their kitchen, where all of this starts to come into focus here. And yeah, I love the way this played, where it wasn't overly dramatic. It was the opposite. Like, it was a great contrast to how wild that previous sequence had been, with these
Yes.
characters and the dagger and the dead body and
Right.
all of this. It's like now all of a sudden they're just so calm and collected,
Right.
talking about essentially like no one will believe him now. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they've gone to very extreme lengths to discredit this
Yes.
kid, but
Right.
it
And you
works.
could see as when he leaves, Superman leaves and he leaves and he is disheveled. He's walking out like a dog with his tail between his legs. He's like flabbergasted. He don't know what to do. And he had some great lines. Okay, okay, like in the street with John Duchette. I know we're kind of bouncing around
That's
a little
fine.
bit, but he had some great lines back there where like I had mentioned before about his coat getting caught in his fist, and then he says, they're talking about the back entrance, and then Duchette asks, "Is this the front?" And he says, "Not unless the front is the back, or the back is the front." And that just adds to the confusion. Another one was, I don't know if I'm inside looking out or outside looking in. I believe he said that, to the lady in black in the hallway. Okay. And, there was just, so many confusing, obviously, meant to confuse the viewer. And I like the analogy that you mentioned, that could this really all be just a dream? Because he did get his head knocked, so there's a lot of confusing things. It's really just spinning you around in circles.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, look, we've come a long way in terms of discussing mental health and being empathetic and compassionate towards people. I know this was a different time. Nevertheless, given the friendship between Clark and Jimmy and Superman and Jimmy, I would have appreciated some more concern from Superman. He's very annoyed and frustrated with Jimmy, but it seems like maybe there could have been an opportunity to be like, "Are you okay? Like, do I need to take you to the hospital?" I mean, because
Right.
it's now too. I mean, again, I don't know, or unless Superman is now chalking all of this up to, well, you had this bump on the head and now you're seeing things. But even then, it's like, I don't know, maybe he needs some help, because it's like he knows Jimmy well enough. Jimmy wouldn't just be making this up for attention.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. It just feels like there was a little bit of a missed opportunity there on the character's part to just kind of try to help your friend.
There's a lot of pulling of, back and forth. There's a lot of string pulling. Like when after Jimmy hit his head and he's on the couch, and Mr. Frank brought in the cat and stuff. Superman found everything quite humorous, and he was all smiles, and he left. But like you said, when he came back, when Jimmy brought that officer and they opened up the door, Superman, he was as annoyed as Clark would have been. Okay, if Clark had a schlepp down there, okay, for the second or third time, okay, and Superman, I don't know, did he have better things to do at the moment? We know Clark did. Clark, he had that report, but of course, so did Superman. He had to do that. He had to do whatever he was doing as Clark Kent. So, but Superman shouldn't have acted the way he was. Clark Kent would have, but Superman would have been like, "Okay, Jimmy, how can I help you?" Like you say.
Yeah, you're right. No, that is very true. The impatience and the frustration, we see that far more from Clark.
Yeah.
I know that was a little odd in that
But
respect.
he was kind of revealing, hey, we're one and the same, and I got work to do.
Yeah. I know.
So,
Kent can't do his work unless I'm there. I love that line. So great. That and the, why don't you kiss your mother goodnight and go to sleep? If I ever have any opportunity to write a Superman story in any capacity, I think that's a line that I'm going to try to work in there. Kiss your mother goodnight and go to sleep. It's great.
Right. Yes.
And I love in the scene with the Franks here, the ways in which all of this kind of starts to be revealed. And And Mrs. Frank in the scene with everyone had produced this this rubber dagger. It's like, oh, these kids playing a prank, and that's again one of the pieces that makes Superman think, okay, this is not what it appears to be. But then when it's just the two of them, she reaches deeper into the bag, right, and she pulls out the real dagger that Jimmy had seen. Right. That's great. Like I love these little details that show how they were doing all of this.
Yeah, but what's funny is that when she was explaining, that she took this, dagger away from the kids. And it was almost like she, was, just as, menacing to those kids. Okay. I forget what she said, but, it was something to the effect, I took care of them, kind of thing. And I was like, that, kind of, added another perplexing. Are we going to see these kids? If you're watching it for the first time, I wondered, are we going to see these kids? Is there going to be more to that? But there wasn't. It was just a plot point to just to kind of throw you off wherever it could.
And I mean, look, you watch it as an adult, and when you see Mrs. Frank come in, it's like, oh, okay, that's the Lady in Black. But watching it as a kid and watching it for the first time, I think that veil in the previous sequence was dark and thick enough, and between that and the accent, it's not so obvious that you would be like, oh, that's clearly the Lady in Black. Like they really do keep you guessing.
Yeah. I found her, as when I was watching it as a kid, I found her very scary. I watched a lot of scary movies back in the 60s. There was a lot of great stuff. Okay. Some of them were cheesy. There was Frankenstein's Daughter, and The Incredible Shrinking Man. And like I mentioned the last time we talked, House on Haunted Hill. There were all of these, very scary things. And, and I thought we were heading in that kind of direction, with her. I didn't.
Yeah, well, that's, I think, to the credit of this, they walked a fine line here, because that middle sequence, it was quote unquote crazy enough where you figure there's going to be some kind of turn, whether it's a dream or a ruse or something, but it wasn't so over the top. Like they could have continued on that track. And again, I think there was a deft touch with this episode where it could have gone in different directions, and it worked.
And when Superman blew her veil off, okay, that was scary. That was really scary, because I didn't know, she had this look on her face. Okay. And, but then everything, calmed down, and he escorts her out of the room, and let's get you hooked up with the others.
'Cause you wouldn't touch a lady, would you? He's of course not, Superman.
Yeah. Right. He handled himself like a gentleman. Okay. And, but you can't outfox Superman.
No. And I mean, right before that, we had, the start of this final sequence where Jimmy, once again, hearing the noises, calls Clark again. But this time Clark can hear with his enhanced super hearing, these two guys, Scarface and Glasses. We see them in their kind of normal guises as they're moving this painting. And so now he knows what's afoot. And again, Superman arrives and makes short work of those two. I couldn't help but laugh at the encounter between Superman and Mr. Frank in the hallway.
Yes.
Where Mr. Frank is firing. I mean, on all of these shows and movies, the bad guys are awful shots, but this guy seemed like he was like really going out of his way to just like aim in the complete opposite direction.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of
runs into the door.
He runs as being generous. He just kind of like, I don't know, bumps into the door and collapses. And I swear, like, Superman has the best reaction where he just kind of like, was like, okay, and he keeps going. Yeah. I loved it.
Right. It's a kind of an anticlimactic, because you think that Superman, is going to probably, I don't know, give him a karate chop, to the shoulder. Okay. But that doesn't happen. And it's very much like how The Face and the Voice ended. Very, very much the same, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, exactly. It was exactly like that, where it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, he just like passed out, basically.
Yeah. 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 You're going to see a little bit more of that in the color years. You'll see, some of the bad guys just, um, melodramatic, faint or bump into something, and that takes them out. And I don't think the fans really, or the viewers really wanted to see those kind of endings, but there they are.
Look, I know we're not going to get Superman punching people in the face anymore. I've made my
Right.
peace with that.
Yeah.
But the karate chop, the knocking the heads together, which is what he does to the two guys in the basement, that feels like a reasonable enough balance where it's not that violent, but it's at least
Right.
got some more teeth on it than
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
fall into a door. I mean,
Yeah. This is Superman show. We want to see Superman stuff,
yeah.
right?
So I couldn't help but laugh at that. But yeah, the super
But
breath to remove the
right,
veil, that was more
but
satisfying.
you had two great Superman moments, really great moments. When he lifts the vault at a place, right? He lifts it, puts it to the side. I mean, that vault door looks like it weighs a ton. Okay, really. Okay. Then when he crashes through the wall, right? Just a seconds later, he crashes through the wall, and that's a very impactful crash. Okay, which we all know he loved crashing through walls. Okay, but those two moments, usually you get one or the other in an episode. Okay, but here you got them like within seconds. I thought that was terrific.
Yeah,
The
no,
main,
that was effective. That helps make up for the lack of
I think
fist fighting.
absolutely, I think so. And just fun. Again, another fun Jack Larson show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, this was a fun one. Again, at the very end, it would have been nice some sort of moment of Jim. I'm real sorry. You were right all
right.
along.
Yeah.
But
So
so it goes.
yeah, that's how it goes. So guess number one. Okay, Frank Ferguson. Okay, most people know him as McDougal in the movie Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Oh, you got to see it. It's one of the funniest Abbott and Costello movies. It really is terrific. And he's in it. And he plays the nemesis to these guys because he's the museum owner. Okay. And he wants his exhibits back. And he thinks that Abbott and Costello, stole his exhibits. He was also in The Good Humor Man with George Reeves. He studied at the Pasadena Playhouse where George Reeves got his acting expertise from. He was in Rancho Notorious with George Reeves. Marlene Dietrich was in that film. And he did some great television appearances, Land of the Giants, Bonanza, Adam 12, Peyton Place, Lone Ranger. So he's another one of those very, very familiar faces. John Duchette. Okay, you'll see him in a lot of westerns, John Wayne movies. He played Slugger.
I know.
Oh, what a great! He really that was. And I think if I'm not wrong, did they ever make a Slugger character in the comic books, like in the '90s? I think it was maybe in the Mike Carlin years.
Oh, we're thinking of Bibbo Babowski.
Oh, maybe that's it.
Yeah, who was, kind of in that similar vein where, kind of talked like this and, wasn't necessarily the sharpest, but,
Right.
ultimately had a good heart and he was Superman's buddy and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Slugger in The Birthday Letter
Yeah.
was the episode. And then he'll be in the Color episode. Okay. Clark Kent Outlaw, which I think is a really, really good episode.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
So really, once again, the Adventures of Superman had some really great guests. Okay. And whenever you can fit time in, try to explore some of them. okay, and try to see some of the really great films that you find on the Turner Movie Classics, because they pop up all the time.
I have to say that's, and this, I've said this before, but like that's one of the, I think, unexpected delights of going through all these episodes and talking about them. It really is the guest cast. I mean, we love our main cast, but these players who come through, really terrific. And the fact that you do have so many people coming back in different roles,
Right.
and you buy them equally, right? Sometimes the roles are kind of close to each other. Other times they're wildly different, and they really do a great job. And like they bring these episodes to life. So I would love to see some of these folks in other projects.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of times, you because they're character actors, unless you're looking at the opening credits of the films, okay, they come in unexpectedly. Okay. And, the gentleman, what was his name? Rise. He was in The Evil Three. I've seen him in, like a Walter Pigeon movie, and I didn't even expect them. And it's fun to see them. You feel, wow. You feel good when you see them in other things. Pleasant surprises.
So Lady in Black, how many fedoras out of 5 would you give this one?
Well, because it creates such confusion, okay, and it's a bit madcap. You've got those 2 moments of Superman lifting that vault, and that wall crash is great. The way the characters went bantered back and forth, the two thieves, right? Again, we know it's not a Panic in the Sky 5, right? So I'm gonna go. I think Jack was great. I'm gonna give it another 4, like I did with Semi Private Eye.
Right on. So last time when we did that one, I gave 2.5. I'm going to go with a 3 for this one, but a very solid, respectable 3. Yeah. I think I love the character of Jimmy Olsen, and I love Jack Larson in the role.
Yeah.
At the same time, when we have these very Jimmy heavy episodes, it's not that I dislike them, but yeah, I don't know that I get as much mileage out of them, but I enjoy them well enough. But yeah, this would be a solid 3 for the reasons you cited and that we've been talking about. So that's what I'll go with for this.
You know what it is that I'm kind of looking at it from the point of view is how many holes can you punch through on an episode, right? And I think Lady in Black holds up. I don't think there's much that you could punch through. Okay, it makes it all the way through, and there's not a lot that you could kind of throw under the bus.
Oh, that's a good point. It is really tight because any questions you have really are answered, right?
Yeah.
When you get to this explanation and our wrap up here, again, the only outstanding question I have is why Jimmy was at this woman's apartment in the first place. If his own home was empty because his mother was away, he should have been house sitting his own house. I don't understand how he's here. It would have made, it would have made more sense because we had the boy who hated Superman, right? And this business about Jimmy's mother's away, so he has to stay with Clark.
Yeah.
Now, my theory in that episode is that perhaps this was a ruse, right? They just, Clark wanted Jimmy to be a good influence on that other kid, so he just said that. That's just my own theory. But if we take the characters at their word, when his mother's away, Jimmy has to stay with someone else. So the idea that his mother's away, so he's going to go stay at a friend's empty apartment, like it would have made more sense if this old deaf lady was there and he was staying with her. Like I said, I'm not going to nitpick. That's the only thing that I'm like, I still don't get that.
Right. If I could, okay, I'd like to express an experience of my own, okay? Many years ago, back in the late 70s when I was at college, okay, the college that I had chosen was about 450 miles away. Okay, so if I was going to, let's say, during a holiday, come back to Long Island, it's an all-day, drive. Okay, it's 8-9 hours. Okay. And so um, there was one Thanksgiving that I decided to not drive home. Okay. My family had moved to Florida. Okay. So it wasn't a big deal. Like I really didn't have a place to go unless, somebody invited me to their house, and I might have been asked, but I was kind of looking forward to a nice, quiet, long weekend. And those weekends were usually like, 4 days. You had Thursday. Well, I forget. It's not important, but it was a long weekend. So what happened was that I had asked a friend if I could stay at his off-campus apartment. I was staying on campus, but they want during those holiday weekends, they want pretty much everybody out of the dorms so they can do some cleaning up and stuff. So a friend of mine let me stay at his off-campus apartment, and I will say, I've got this big courtyard, okay, and you look out and you see all of these, there's a first floor and second floor, and I'm there by myself, okay, for 4 days, okay, and it starts getting dark early, and the only thing I could see, in the distance was maybe the laundry room area, where there was light coming out. And I just in my mind thought of, that maybe this was, the landlord people, okay, the people that ran, but I never saw them, okay. And everything was just like this surrealistic because I was by myself. And one evening I had gone to sleep. Well, we go to sleep every night, but this one in particular. Okay, so when you walk into these, these student apartments, you're kind of walking into their living room, and there's a couch. So I slept on the couch. They had two rooms, but I wasn't going to use their bed, so I slept on the couch. So one night, okay, I hear a knock on the door. Okay, so I get up and I go over, and it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I go over and I open up the door, and there's this kind of tall, lanky guy and this really heavy set woman. Okay. And they were asking me, what was I doing there? And so I told them that I was, I go to Canton College and I was staying, for the weekend. I didn't want to drive down to Long Island, blah, blah, blah. So then they left. I went back on the couch, went back to sleep. Well, I woke up the next morning and I thought of that and I go, did that really happen? I couldn't tell the difference. If those two people, if that was just a dream or did that really happen? It was so lifelike, and so that's my Lady in Black kind of story.
Wow. And did you ever encounter them again, or did you ever talk about them to anyone and someone was like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, or no?
I did tell the story to my friends, and I asked them, what does the landlord and the landlady look like? And he goes, I've never seen them, so he didn't know. But I have told the story a couple of times, only because the dream was so real, that I thought I was standing there explaining to people. And I still to this day don't know if it really was, that I really did, or was it a dream?
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. Yeah. I don't know that I have any story like that. I would happily share, but I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah.
But it was because I was alone. Okay. And then the whole surrealisticness of, of not seeing anybody, kind of played on me, which if I heard noises, that would have been, I would have been like Jimmy Olsen trying to call Clark Kent.
That's right. And he would have told you to kiss your mother goodnight and go to sleep. You have indigestion of the imagination.
Yeah. Great stuff. So, Anthony, thank you once for having me on the show. I very much appreciate it. I hope it's worthy and stacks up with the rest of them.
No, absolutely. I appreciate you coming back, and I encourage everyone to check out your work. I know you've been doing a lot with the Superman newspaper dailies over at supermanhomepage.com. Is there anything else you want to share with folks before we sign off?
No, that's it.
All right.
So I look forward to, the future shows and, all the guests, and I'm sure maybe you'll have some new ones also.
Yes. Well, I thank you so much. And it's funny, you told the story about Thanksgiving weekend, and actually this episode will come out right before Thanksgiving, and we're actually going to be off next week for Thanksgiving. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with the final few episodes. It's the final stretch of season 2. So we're really winding down here with the black and white episode. So for those who celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. Come back in 2 weeks. And until then, as always, remember, only Superman can do super things. Be sure to check out our sister podcast series, Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a weekly exploration of Superman's vast 85-year mythology, available wherever you get podcasts. Please join us on social media, become a patron, and subscribe, rate, and review today. Links are in the show notes. Thank you all.